Marcus Wells had learned long ago that invisibility was a survival skill. At 42 years old, he had spent the last decade working as a night custodian at Hartwell Financial Tower in downtown Chicago, moving through hallways like a ghost, emptying trash bins and wiping down conference tables where decisions worth millions were made. Nobody looked at him twice. Nobody asked his name more than once. And that was fine by him until the night everything changed odd. It was a Tuesday in late September when Marcus stepped into the executive suite on the 47th floor. The lights were supposed to be off. Everyone was supposed to be gone. But as he pushed his cleaning cart past the mahogany doors, he heard voices, low and urgent, coming from the corner office belonging to Thomas Brennan, the company's chief financial officer. Marcus paused. His hand hovered over the handle of his mop. Something in those voices made his stomach tighten. He shouldn't have listened. That's what he told himself later, over and over, but he did. Through the crack in the door, he heard Thomas speaking to someone Marcus couldn't see. The conversation was tense, clipped, full of numbers and names Marcus didn't recognize. Then Thomas said something that made Marcus's blood run cold. "We move the pension funds offshore by Friday. The auditors won't catch it until after the merger. By then, it's their problem, not ours. $60 million should cover what we need." The rest disappears. Marcus stepped back from the door, his heart pounding so hard he thought they might hear it. He had worked alongside people who had their entire lives tied up in that pension fund. People with families, with dreams of retirement, with decades of loyalty to this company. And now someone was about to steal it all. He backed away slowly, his cartwheel squeaking softly on the polished floor. He finished his shift in a fog, his mind racing through scenarios. What could he do? Who would believe him? He was a janitor. They were executives. His word against theirs meant nothing. But when he got home that night to his small apartment in Pilsen, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat at his kitchen table, staring at his phone, thinking about his father. His father had worked 40 years in a factory, retired with a pension that got cut in half when the company went bankrupt. Marcus had watched that betrayal break his father's spirit, watched him spend his final years in bitterness and regret. The same thing was about to happen to hundreds of people, and he was the only one who knew by morning. Marcus had made his decision. He called in sick to work, something he almost never did, and spent the day figuring out his next move. He needed proof, a recording, a document, something more than his word. He spent hours researching, reading forums, learning about whistleblower protections and legal procedures. The more he read, the more daunting it seemed. But he kept going. That night, Marcus returned to work with a small audio recorder tucked into his shirt pocket. His hands shook as he went through his usual routine, mopping floors and emptying bins, waiting for his chance. Around 11 o'clock, he heard voices again from the executive suite. This time, there were 3 people in the room. Thomas Brennan, the company's CEO Patricia Aldridge, and someone Marcus didn't recognize. He positioned himself near the door, pretending to clean a water fountain, and pressed record. What he captured over the next 20 minutes was damning. They discussed the pension fund transfer in detail, talking about shell companies and offshore accounts, about timing the theft to coincide with a merger announcement that would distract the media. They laughed about the auditors who wouldn't catch it, about the employees who would never know what hit them. Patricia said something that made Marcus's stomach turn. They're lucky to have jobs at all. This is just good business. Marcus saved the recording to 3 different places. His phone, a flash drive, and a cloud storage account he created that night. He spent the rest of his shift in a state of nervous energy, jumping at every sound, convinced someone would discover what he had done. But nobody noticed him. They never did. When dawn came and his shift ended, Marcus walked out of that building knowing there was no going back. He spent the next day trying to figure out who to contact. The police seemed wrong. This wasn't a street crime. It was corporate fraud, complex and technical. He looked up the Securities and Exchange Commission, read about their whistleblower program, but something held him back. He needed someone local, someone who would understand the urgency. Then he remembered reading about a journalist named Sarah. Chun, who had broken several corruption stories in the past year. Her articles were thorough, fearless, and she seemed to care about ordinary people getting hurt by powerful institutions. Marcus sent her an email from a new account he created, keeping it brief. I have evidence of pension fund theft at Hartwell Financial. $60 million, recording included. If you want the story, meet me tomorrow at Grant Park near the Buckingham Fountain, 2 o'clock. He didn't sign his name. After he hit send, he sat staring at the screen for 10 minutes, wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Sarah Chun responded within an hour. I'll be there. Wear something red so I can find you. Marcus barely slept that night. He kept replaying the recording, making sure it was clear, making sure it was real. In the morning, he called in sick again. His supervisor sounded annoyed, but Marcus didn't care. He had more important things to worry about. At 2 o'clock, Marcus stood by the fountain wearing a red baseball cap, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. The park was busy with tourists and office workers on lunch breaks. He scanned the crowd nervously, looking for someone who might be Sarah Chun. Then he saw her, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a leather bag slung over her shoulder, walking directly toward him. She didn't smile, just nodded once. Marcus? He nodded back. They walked together away from the fountain, finding a quieter spot near the trees. Sarah pulled out a notebook and a small recorder. Tell me everything. Marcus talked for almost an hour. He told her about the conversation. He overheard about the recording he made, about the pension fund and the people whose lives would be destroyed. Sarah listened without interrupting, taking notes in quick shorthand. When he finished, she looked at him seriously. You understand what you're doing, right? These are powerful people. They will come after you. Marcus had thought about nothing else for days. I know, but if I don't do this, who will? Sarah took the flash drive he offered and promised to verify everything before publishing. She also told him to get a lawyer, someone who specialized in whistleblower cases. She gave him a name, an attorney, named David Rosen, who had handled several high-profile cases. Marcus thanked her and walked away, feeling both lighter and more terrified than he had ever felt in his life. David Rosen's office was in a converted warehouse in the West Loop. Nothing fancy but professional. When Marcus explained why he was there, David listened carefully, asked pointed questions, and then leaned back in his chair. You did the right thing, but you need to be prepared for what comes next. They'll try to discredit you, investigate your background, make you look unreliable. Do you have anything in your past they could use against you? Marcus thought about his life. A few traffic tickets, a credit card he defaulted on years ago during a rough patch. Nothing criminal. David nodded. Good, we can work with that. He explained the legal protections available to whistleblowers, the potential rewards if the case led to recovered funds, and the likely timeline. This won't be quick, he warned. But if your evidence is solid, we have a real shot. Sarah's article came out 3 days later. The headline read, Hartwell Financial Executives Caught Planning Massive Pension Theft. The story was detailed, methodical, and devastating. It included transcripts from Marcus's recording, expert analysis of the financial schemes discussed, and interviews with pension fund trustees who expressed shock and outrage. The article didn't name Marcus, referring to him only as a confidential witness, but within hours, the story had gone viral. News trucks surrounded Hartwell Tower. The stock price plummeted. The SEC announced an immediate investigation. Marcus watched it all unfold from his apartment, his phone turned off, his curtains drawn. He had told his supervisor he was dealing with a family emergency and wouldn't be in for a while. He knew it was only a matter of time before someone connected the dots. That time came faster than he expected. 2 days after the article published, Marcus answered a knock at his door to find 2 men in suits standing in the hallway. They identified themselves as attorneys representing Hartwell Financial. We know who you are, one of them said, and we know what you did. They told him the company was prepared to offer him a settlement, $200,000 in exchange for his silence and a statement retracting his allegations. Marcus looked at them for a long moment. Then he closed the door in their faces. The retaliation started immediately. Someone leaked his name to the media. Reporters camped outside his building. His photo appeared on news websites alongside speculation about his motives. An anonymous source claimed Marcus had been fired from a previous job for theft, a complete fabrication, but the damage was done. Marcus stopped going outside except when absolutely necessary. He ordered groceries online, ignored calls from unknown numbers, and tried to hold himself together. David Rosen filed a formal whistleblower complaint with the SEC on Marcus's behalf, including the original recording and additional documentation Sarah's investigation had uncovered. The SEC moved quickly, freezing Hartwell's offshore accounts and launching a full audit. Thomas Brennan and Patricia Aldridge were placed on administrative leave. The board of directors promised a thorough internal investigation. But Marcus knew how these things worked. Promises were easy. Accountability was rare. Weeks turned into months. The investigation dragged on, complicated by layers of corporate obfuscation and legal maneuvering. Hartwell hired an army of lawyers who challenged every aspect of the case. They questioned the legality of Marcus's recording, argued he had violated company policy, suggested he had ulterior motives. The media coverage shifted from outrage to skepticism. Some commentators questioned whether the whole thing was overblown. Marcus felt himself sinking under the weight of it all. Then came the breakthrough. A forensic accountant working for the SEC discovered a paper trail that corroborated everything Marcus had reported. Wire transfers, shell company registrations, emails between executives planning the pension fund diversion. The evidence was overwhelming. In early March, federal prosecutors announced criminal charges against Thomas Brennan, Patricia Aldridge, and 2 other executives. The charges included wire fraud, conspiracy, and theft of pension assets. The case was going to trial. Marcus was subpoenaed to testify. David prepared him thoroughly, conducting mock cross-examinations, teaching him how to stay calm under hostile questioning, reminding him that the truth was on his side. But Marcus still felt nauseated the morning he walked into the federal courthouse. The courtroom was packed with reporters, employees, and spectators. Marcus took the stand wearing his only suit, a navy blue one he had bought at a thrift store. He placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor took him through his testimony methodically. Marcus described his job, his routine, the night he overheard the conversation, his decision to record the second meeting. He explained why he came forward, talking about his father and the pension theft that had destroyed his final years. He spoke about the employees he worked alongside, people who trusted the company with their futures. His voice was steady, clear, and honest. The defense attorney tried to tear him apart. She questioned his motives, suggested he was after money, pointed out inconsistencies and minor details. She asked why he had recorded executives without permission, implying he was unethical. Marcus answered each question calmly. I recorded them because I needed proof. I came forward because it was the right thing to do. I didn't ask for money. I just wanted the truth to come out. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Expert witnesses testified about the financial schemes, explaining how the pension fund was being systematically looted. Other employees came forward with additional allegations of misconduct. The recording Marcus made was played in court, and the courtroom fell silent as Thomas Brennan's voice filled the space, casually discussing stealing millions from his own employees. When the recording ended, several jurors were visibly angry. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon. Guilty on all counts. Thomas Brennan stood stone-faced as the judge read the decision. Patricia Aldridge wiped tears from her face. The other defendants stared at the floor. Marcus sat in the gallery, David beside him, feeling a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. It was over. Or at least, this part was over. Sentencing came 2 months later. Thomas Brennan received 12 years in federal prison. Patricia Aldridge got 8 years. The others received shorter sentences, but substantial fines. The judge ordered full restitution to the pension fund, plus penalties. Hartwell Financial settled with the SEC for $75 million. The company's board was replaced, and new leadership promised reforms. Marcus knew those promises might not mean much, but at least the thieves were going to prison. Marcus received a whistleblower award from the SEC, a percentage of the penalties recovered. The check was for $8 million. He stared at it for a long time when it arrived in the mail, unable to process the number. David helped him set up accounts, hire a financial advisor, make smart decisions. But Marcus didn't want a mansion or fancy cars. He wanted something different. He used part of the money to start a foundation that helped whistleblowers with legal fees and living expenses while their cases were being investigated. He called it the Daniel Wells Foundation, naming it after his father. He hired staff, rented office space, and started taking calls from people who had witnessed wrongdoing and didn't know what to do. He understood their fear, their uncertainty, their courage. He had lived it. Marcus never went back to Hartwell Tower. He didn't need to work anymore, but he found purpose in helping others find their voices. He met with journalists, testified before Congress about the need for stronger whistleblower protections, and spoke at universities about corporate accountability. He was no longer invisible. People knew his name, his story, his face. Sometimes that felt overwhelming, but mostly it felt right. One afternoon, almost 2 years after everything started, Marcus stood at his father's grave. He had visited many times before, but today felt different. The grass was green, the sun warm, and Marcus finally felt like he could breathe without the weight of secrets pressing on his chest. He knelt down and touched the headstone. "I did it, Dad. They didn't get away with it this time." The wind rustled through the trees, and Marcus stayed there for a while, just sitting with the quiet, walking back to his car. Marcus thought about all the people whose pensions had been saved, the families who could retire with dignity, the justice that had actually happened. It wasn't perfect. Some people still blamed him for exposing the company, for causing stock losses, for making trouble. But Marcus had learned something important through all of this. Doing the right thing doesn't always feel good, and it's rarely easy. But it matters. It changes things. And sometimes, one voice speaking truth can shake an entire building down to its foundation. Marcus drove home through the city, past the towering skyscrapers where other secrets were surely being kept, where other injustices were taking shape. He couldn't fix everything. He couldn't save everyone. But he had done what he could, and that would have to be enough. When he got home, he made himself dinner, something simple, and sat by his window watching the sun set over Chicago. The sky turned orange and pink, beautiful and ordinary. Marcus finished his meal and washed his dish, moving through the simple rituals of life with a peace he hadn't known in years. The next morning brought emails from people asking for help, calls from lawyers seeking advice, and interview requests from a documentary filmmaker. Marcus made coffee, opened his laptop, and got to work. There were more stories to tell, more truths to uncover, more battles to fight. But he wasn't alone anymore. Across the city, across the country, other people were finding their courage, speaking up, refusing to stay silent. The work continued, and Marcus was ready for whatever came next. 3 months later, Marcus received an unexpected call. It was from Janet Morrison, a woman who had worked in Hartwell's accounting department for 15 years. She had been one of the employees whose pension Marcus had saved, though they had never met. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "I just wanted to thank you personally. My husband has Parkinson's disease. Without that pension, I don't know how we would have managed his care. You gave us our future back." Marcus felt his throat tighten. He had received thank you messages before, but hearing the relief in her voice made everything he had endured feel worth it. "You don't have to thank me," he said quietly. "I just did what anyone should have done." "But we both know that's not true," she replied. Most people would have looked away. That conversation stayed with Marcus for days. It reminded him why he had started the foundation, why he continued to take calls from frightened whistleblowers who were risking everything to do the right thing. Each person who reached out carried their own burden of knowledge, their own moral struggle. Marcus understood that weight intimately. He knew the sleepless nights, the fear of retaliation, the doubt that whispered maybe you should just stay quiet. But he also knew the cost of silence. One case particularly moved him. A young nurse named Teresa contacted the foundation after discovering that her hospital was reusing single-use medical devices to cut costs. She had reported it internally and been ignored. Now she was being pressured to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Marcus connected her with attorneys, helped her navigate the reporting process, and assured her she wasn't crazy for caring about patient safety. 6 months later, the hospital was fined, practices were changed, and Teresa kept her job under whistleblower protections. She sent Marcus a photo of herself standing outside the hospital, smiling. The caption read, "Still here. Still fighting." Marcus pinned it to the wall in his office, a reminder that courage was contagious. Sarah Chun stayed in touch, occasionally calling with questions about other stories she was investigating. They had developed a mutual respect, a shared understanding that truth-telling came with costs but also with profound meaning. She told him once over coffee that his case had changed how she approached her work. "Before you, I thought exposing corruption was about the big reveal, the headline. But watching what you went through showed me it's really about the people who have to live with the consequences." Marcus appreciated that recognition. He had never sought to be a hero, just a human being who refused to participate in a lie. As seasons changed and years passed, Marcus found himself settling into a life he never could have imagined during those nights, pushing a cleaning cart through empty offices. He had money, yes, but more importantly, he had purpose. He had community. He had the respect of people who mattered to him. And he had something his father never got, the satisfaction of knowing that his courage had prevented others from experiencing the same betrayal his family had endured. On quiet evenings, Marcus would sometimes drive past Hartwell Tower, its glass facade gleaming in the city lights. The building still stood, housing new executives and new employees, continuing its business under reformed leadership. Marcus didn't feel anger when he looked at it anymore. He felt something closer to peace. The building was just steel and glass. What mattered were the choices people made inside it. And his choice to speak up had proven that even the most invisible among us could change the course of history. If you've stayed with this story until the end. Thank you for listening. Justice doesn't always come easily, and it rarely arrives the way we expect. But when ordinary people find extraordinary courage, when they choose truth over comfort and integrity over silence, real change becomes possible. We would love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you in this story? Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments below. If you believe stories about courage and accountability matter, please consider liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us continue bringing these important stories to light. Until next time, stay strong, stay honest, and we'll see you in the next story.